Neoclassical period or the Age of Enlightenment, or also known as the 17th century period. In this video, we will discuss all about the Neoclassical Age. Neoclassical era refers to the period from 1660 with the restoration of England under monarchy, with Charles II taking over the throne of England, and it lasted up to 1798, the year when William Wordsworth's book Lyrical Ballads was published. This age is basically divided into three major periods. The first period is the Restoration period, starting from 1660 and lasted up to 1700. The second is the Augustan age, starting from 1700 and going up to 1750. And the third division is the Age of Johnson, starting from 1750 and lasting up to 1798, when the entire Neoclassical period ended. This period is also called as the Age of Enlightenment because the ideas like the value of human happiness, natural law, liberty, progress, toleration, fraternity, constitutional government, and the separation of church and the state were flowing into England from Europe, which led to the French Revolution in 1789. Neoclassical literature is characterized by order, accuracy, and structure, which is directly opposite to the Renaissance concept, where man was basically seen as good. The neoclassical writers show man as inherently flawed. Many literary genres like parody, essays, satire, letters, fables, etc. emerged during this period. Let us first learn about the Restoration period of the Neoclassical Age, or the 17th century period. The Restoration period started from 1660 and lasted up to 1700. The Restoration Age was a reaction against the previous Puritan age under the rule of Richard Cromwell. This age focused on scientific knowledge and investigation. With the extension of Charles II, the theatres which were long closed down during the Puritan period were now reopened. It is a point to be noted here that under the rule of Oliver Cromwell, almost for 18 years, starting from 1642 till 1660, all the theatres were closed down because Richard Cromwell did not prefer the idea of any kind of entertainment, and he believed that any kind of entertainment should be done only in the name of God and not for personal pleasures. So after Charles II came to the throne in 1660, all those theatres which were closed down by Oliver Cromwell and later on by his son Richard Cromwell were now reopened, and the influx of art and literature came back to England. Comedy became the dominant literary genre during this time period. This form became famous as comedy of manners. This age is also referred to as the Age of Dryden, sometimes because of Dryden being one of the most important writers from this time period. Now, for the first time, the women started to take part in roles, plays on the stage, and many professional women writers like Ephra Behn started writing and getting published. The writings of Restoration period were majorly centered on themes like love and marriage, social class and social hierarchies, morality and ethics, politics and satire, gender roles and identity of oneself, and national identity and also patriotism. So these were the major themes on which the plays were being written. To understand the Restoration period, we will divide the age into three different genres. That is, we will see what was happening in the poetry, what was being written under the drama, and what was being produced under the genre of prose during the Restoration period. So three literary heads are there to make it easy for you to understand the Restoration period and the literature of this period. So let us first talk about the poetry during the Restoration time period. One of the famous poets of the Restoration period was John Milton, who lived from 1608 to 1674. And one of his most popular work is Paradise Lost, which is an epic narrative written in 1667 in blank verse and into 10 books, which was later amended and divided into 12 books. This work addresses the fall of man, including the temptations of Adam and Eve by the fallen angel called Satan, and God's expulsion of them from the Garden of Eden. Other major works by Milton are Lycidas, written in 1637, which is a pastoral elegy on the death of Edward King, a friend of Milton at the Cambridge University, who was drowned in the sea. Then there are two companion poems by Milton, El Penseroso and Le Allegro, written in 1631, which means a contemplative man and a thinking man respectively. Then Milton wrote poems like Samson Agonistes in the year 1671 and Paradise Regained in 1671. Second important poet from this period is John Dryden. John Dryden was England's first poet laureate in 1668. This age is also sometimes referred to as the Age of Dryden after his name, since he was the major writer of this period. He wrote in heroic couplet and made this form as the standard form of English poetry of the 18th century. He wrote satires, religious poems, fables and plays, etc. during his lifetime. Some of the most notable poems written by Dryden are Annus Mirabilis, written in 1667, which is a historical poem celebrating English victory over the Dutch war. Second was Absalom and Achitophel, written in 1681, which is a political satire on Monmouth rebellion. Third is The Hind and the Panther, written in 1687, which is an allegorical poem defending Dryden's conversion to Catholicism. Then there is All for Love, written in 1678, which is a poem based on Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra. Then we have Astrea Redux in 1660, a poem welcoming King Charles II back to England when he was restored to the monarchy. Then we have a poem called To His Sacred Majesty, written in 1661, a poem praising King Charles II. Then we have The Medal, written in 1682, which is a satirical poem attacking the Whig party. The next important poet of this period was Thomas Shadwell, who lived from 1642 to 1692. It is important to note here that since Shadwell succeeded as poet laureate after Dryden in 1688, so there rose an enmity between the two poets, and this enmity can be seen in their satirical and scathing attack on each other via their poems. Shadwell attacked Dryden in his poem The Medal of John Base, and Dryden in return satirized him in his poem Absalom and Achitophel, and also in another poem Macflecknoe. Then we have poets like Samuel Butler. Butler was an English poet, a satirist and a writer. He is best known for his epic poem Hudibras, which is a mock heroic satire written during 1663 to 1678. This poem included themes like critique of the Puritanism and hypocrisy, and also it is a satire of the politics and the society of England during his time. Then we have female poets like Ephra Behn. Ephra Behn is the first female writer who began writing to earn herself a living. So she is considered as the role model for late women writers who would enter this arena of writing, which was majorly dominated by men until now. She wrote novels, dramas, and also poems too for a living. Her most popular poems are a collection named Poems Upon Several Occasions, written in 1684. Now we will talk about the Restoration prose. The Restoration period saw the rise of many genres of prose writings like the novels, diary writing, essays, etc. There are quite a few writers who were writing some really good prose during this time. Let's see who these writers were. The first writer was Samuel Pepys. Pepys began to record events in his diary from the year 1660 and continued till 1669. It can be considered as a historical document since all the social, political, courtly and everyday experiences of Pepys can be found in his narrative written in his diary. Second is John Evelyn. John Evelyn was a friend of Pepys, and he too was a diarist like Pepys. He too was recording the events of his day-to-day life. His diary writing is more of an autobiographical account of himself. Third important prosite is again Ephra Behn. As I discussed before, Ephra Behn was writing everything, poetry, drama and also prose to earn herself a living. Ephra Behn is popular for writing the very first novel of English literary history. She is credited to have written Oronuku, or the Royal Slave, in 1688, which is the story of an African prince who is captured and made a slave. It is a tragic story where the central character Oronuku is finally dismembered and quartered to death. That is, his body is cut into pieces, and that is the way he is killed. The next important prose writer was Sir Thomas Browne. Sir Thomas Browne's major works include his spiritual autobiography called Religio Medici, among others. It is an essay in theology. Then we have John Milton. John Milton, along with his poetry, also wrote prose writings like Areopagitica in 1644, which is his plea for the liberty of press. So Areopagitica was written for the liberty of press. Then we have Isaac Walton. Walton wrote prose named The Complete Angler, a prose celebrating the art of fishing. Besides that, Walton was also famous for writing biographies, one of which he wrote of his close friend John Donne. So Isaac Walton wrote biographies of many other writers, which all together titled under his collection named Walton's Lives. Then we have Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes lived from Elizabethan age to the Restoration period, but his major literary contribution came during the Interregnum and later the Restoration period. His most popular work is Leviathan, which was published in 1651, and it is a philosophical treatise on politics and human nature. Now we will come to the Restoration drama, which is the major literary genre that was being into practice during the Restoration period. The most important playwrights of this period were firstly John Dryden. John Dryden, besides being a poet, was also an accomplished dramatist. There are many plays to his credit. We can divide Dryden's plays into comedies, tragicomedies, and tragedies. Now, his comedies are The Wild Gallant, his tragic comedies are The Rival Ladies, and his tragedies are The Indian Emperor, The Conquest of Granada, Aurangzeb, All for Love, and The World Well Lost. Besides Dryden, there were some playwrights who popularized the genre of comedy of manners during this period. Their plays were full with wit and humor. Sexually explicit content was there in these plays. They were very scandalous language that was being used, and they showed the moral degradation of the society during that time under the rule of Charles II during his time in his court. The second important writer who was writing comedy during this time period was William Wycherley. Wycherley is popular for writing the play The Country Wife and The Plain Dealer. Other playwrights were William Congreve, who wrote plays on the same themes, and his notable plays include plays like The Old Bachelor, written in 1693, The Double Dealer, Love for Love, and The Way of the World. The Way of the World was written in 1700 and is one of the most famous plays by Wycherley. The Morning Bride is his only tragedy. The rest all are comedies. Then we have another playwright called George Etherege, who was one of the important playwrights who invented the genre comedy of manners. His famous plays include Love in a Tub, The Man of Mode, or Sir Fopling Flutter, and another one, She Would If She Could, among others. Then we have John Vanbrugh, who is famous for his play The Provoked Wife, then George Farquhar, who wrote Love in a Bottle, and then Thomas Ottaway, who wrote Venice Preserved. Then we have Ephra Behn. Besides writing novels and poetry, Behn was also writing comedies like The Rover or The Banished Cavaliers. So that was all about the Restoration period. The next section of the 17th to 18th century literature is the Augustan Age. Why I'm saying 17th to 18th century? Because the Age of Enlightenment, which we are talking about right now in this video, started from 1660, which is the 17th century, and it went up to 1798, which is the end of 18th century. So it started somewhere from the mid of the 17th century, and it went up to the end of the 18th century. So when we talk about the Augustan Age, which is the division after the Restoration period, and it started in year 1700 and lasted up to 1750, so we are now entering into the 18th century. But still the age entirely is named as the Neoclassical Age or the Age of Enlightenment. So we will now talk about the Augustan Age in the next video.